guess who's with us? Doesn't take much to see. It's Kelly and Charles, not only old favorites, but real quality favorites, quality people who really make this program what it is. Because, and Charles was remarkable yesterday with Brian.
Yeah.
And I believe his suggestion of making the topic about pretty much embracing failure, and not looking at it as an enemy, but as a teacher. And today, collectively, Brian's help, we decided clarity would be the topic. And I know that I put in connections for conversations for collaborations, and we can cover that down the road. But again, this program is for everybody in the audience, everybody who's showing up here for the first time. This is your opportunity to share, to learn, to meet, greet, whatever you can do to make it justifiable for the investment you put in. With that said, chat's open. We've got Dean already saying hello. I'll put his name on the board. It seems like when you put somebody first, it doesn't take long before a second one shows up. With that said, let me turn it over to Kelly, and she can share a little bit about herself for those who are new or don't know as much, and kind of her thoughts on clarity.
Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in from around the world. So for anybody who doesn't know me, I've been doing Dawn's show here since January, which I can't believe it. It's been, these 3 months have flown by to boot. And the reason that I started doing this, and just a short background on it, is I was really looking for personal clarity on some things of what I needed to do. I was feeling a little bit stalled, to go off of yesterday's show, career and personal wise, just feeling like, I feel like I should be doing more, but I didn't know what that more was. And, I prayed about it, and I'm not kidding you. 2 days later, the next day I was on the phone with Don, and we were talking about what he's doing with his LinkedIn lives and where he was going with it. And 2 days later, I was on it, which I can't believe that I did it, but it was just, I'm jumping and I'm going with it because this feels right. And now I've been on a regular, and it's been a fantastic ride. And I honestly feel the clarity that it's given to me to go off of where we're going today. And this is just truth, is it gave me clarity of this platform and my message. Like, I reach so many more people here, but it's also giving me personal clarity because I'm getting things back, like the joy that I feel from the community, the support, the security, the safety that helps encourage you to try other things and new things. I mean, I would never have thought I'd be doing LinkedIn Lives because they just sound terrifying because it's live. But it really just is a conversation. It has enriched my life so much. And I just feel that it's kind of like the floodgates open when you start doing things in a headspace with clarity. And when I stop taking control of everything, because I do try to do that sometimes, and it never works, by the way, is that the floodgates open and all these amazing things start happening. And life is just, I've always been one to say, be present in the moment. I definitely was a little bit off track. And I feel that's what this does too, is it reminds us, for an hour, granted it is technology, and I know we're on a screen, but we're not head down, and we're actually having a conversation with human beings and not bots or, not a text message or any of those. And I just think it's so has enriched my life in so many ways. So many people I have met here, the relationships that have created, and the personal growth that it has done for me and continues to do for me. I mean, I love how this has organically grown. I love that this is completely unscripted. I know that we came out and said, we're going to talk about clarity today. It may take a turn. You never know what happens because we do pay attention to what you all say in the chat. But we meet literally 5 minutes before we go live and just kind of hey, how are you doing? So it's not like we plan anything. And that's the other part that I love about it. And it keeps you present. And I think that also gives clarity, is we're always so worried. I shouldn't say always, but a lot of people are so concerned about, what am I going to say to that? and they're thinking so much about how I'm going to respond that they're not in the moment of the conversation. And really, you miss so much when you don't take that moment to sit back and just listen. Don't think about what you're going to say. What do you think, Charles?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fantastic, Kelly, and especially appreciate that you prayed about your particular situation several months ago. I think that's a whole other topic for another day. It's the power of prayer. What I want to say about clarity, I think that it's really important to distinguish clarity from goal setting, because goal setting is more like something that would come after you have clarity. And there's a saying that I once heard about clarity, which I think is really, really important. The future will reward clarity and will punish certainty. And I think that the certainty aspect of that statement it sort of conjures up images of polarization and divisiveness, possibly, and getting too much into the details. Whereas clarity is really all about a certain stillness and confidence, and just you know what direction you're going in. You have focus, but it's not so much focus that you're caught up in the weeds. It's really and it's not really even a strategic thing. I know that the business people are going to thinking, okay, well, clarity sounds like strategy, but it's not even that. It's more it's like a form of a vision, that you're clear, that you're going in a particular direction. And I think that distinction is really, really important, and something that we can tease out today, along with other topics that come out along the way.
Well, I think that's so great the way we're starting this show, because one thing that I took away, and that's what everybody should be counting, how many takeaways there are, how many sayings, how many insights, how many things you can follow, is really two things that I want to focus on, is the people you meet, right? And how you meet them. You meet them at least as an equal. And to Kelly's point, if people are intimidated by this, and they shouldn't be, and they won't be once they put their toe in the water typically, is that you admire the people who do, because you think it takes superpowers to do it. So if somebody, let's just say like Brian, who's had an illustrious athletic career, medical career, business career, he's still somewhat of a newbie to LinkedIn Live, right? So to him, someone who's already doing it and is accomplished and admired, now is somebody he wants to reach for, right? So now the persona that you always had, but were never projected properly, and more importantly, not to the right groups, right? When you're auditioning to a group that you don't align with and they don't align with you, you naturally figure you're not going to be accepted. So the key is to leave the group. And the other element that's so important is, because we don't plan, the question could be, what's on your mind right now, right? And the closer you can get to what are you thinking, what are you feeling right now, the more clarity you'll have in your expression, because it's not planned. I mean, if someone said Wednesday you're going to be on a show, and they said plan what you're going to say, I'm leaving too much of a gap between when it happens and when I have to say something. And why do you have to plan when you can allow the audience, everybody on the show, to steer the boat? I think that's the hardest thing, is to lose leadership before you even get it, or to give it up before you even try to achieve it. Is, everybody wants to give you a seat on the stage, but you feel better in the audience. So let me just introduce a lot of people. I thought I'll batch it today, because I think it can be somewhat of a distraction when someone's talking and you just see scrolling going by. But here we go. Dean's an everyday here. And what I love is the true character, the soul, the nature of the person comes out. And the other thing I was going to say, I just remembered, and that's a good thing about not planning, is you catch up, is, being Sunday, there is something to prayer. There is something to belief. There is something to faith, and however you get there, it's a good place to be. and it's a good place to be with people who not only wish you good, but in a lot of ways pray you good, you know, and are looking out for you when you don't know there's someone around the corner thinking of you, you know, and that's what I think is so valuable. Paul, can't say enough about Paul. He's always very positive, very encouraging. And you know what? I'm so impressed with Paul being as young as he is. He's so open to change, right? And new information and new connections. I know when I was younger, I thought I knew everything. And the older I get, the more I find out how wrong I was. What's your thoughts, Kelly?
I mean, I completely agree with all of that. And of course, you know, it being Sunday, and I guess, you know, I can't really hide my faith too much. And I never try to by any means. And I love that. I mean, and that's part of community too. I think I know when I know someone's praying for me, I have friends that'll be like, hey, you know, I can tell that, you know, something's up. Do you need me to pray for you? Yes, I need you to pray for XYZ. It's that extra something that you get of that security and safety of community that it's like, you know what, I can do this. It just gives you that little extra charge. And then to go back to what I said in the very beginning about control, you know, when I when I give it to God, things work out much better for me. And life is just a lot simpler. And that's, you know, to go to Charles's point for me about clarity, it's about that space. You know, we can get so sucked into the noise of the world. And those are the moments that I go, and I'm just very self-aware most of the time, that I can be like, wow, I'm not feeling myself. I need to come back and take a look at what's happening here, where you can see people when they spiral. And it's like, man, they are so stuck in the noise right now. They have no idea what they're doing, and they just continue to spin, spin, spin. And then that's when it's like, you need to take a step back and then get some clarity. And like you said too, Charles, it's not just about the task. I mean, I feel that this is something so separate for me as far as this is life. It's not about work. It does impact work, because I will say, when I was saying, you know, all these wonderful things started coming at me, it's not even just work things. It's people. I have met some great people have come into my life, and things just, you know, when you do have that clarity, at least for me, I see things, and I don't want to say so differently, but it is, because you're in the present and in the space, and I'm here now. I'm not worried about, you know, and worry, what is that? It's the biggest stealer of joy. And the world can tend to get us in that space where we're thinking like, oh my God, what am I going to do next week? You know, rents are going up again, and this is happening, and this is happening. And, you know, that you spiral in all of that. And, you know, to Christy's statement that needs to be on a t-shirt, you know, get out of your head. And those are the things that happen. I love, you know, it's Sunday morning at 8 a.m. And actually, as I was sitting having my coffee, and I thought, how many people, I would never have thought I'd be on a LinkedIn Live at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning, but I couldn't wait to get on here this morning. And I mean, I start my day with quiet, and I listen to Christian music. I love Kelle. And it just gets me framed for the day, and I'm excited for the day. And of course, I went out for a walk because it's beautiful here this morning. So what are your thoughts, Charles?
I think you need to make that t-shirt and start selling them on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of power in prayer, and I love your comment about handing things over to God. I have a great little mindfulness exercise. Inhale, do your best. Exhale, give God the rest.
Yes.
Which is one of the ways to get some burdens off your heart. And I think that the idea of quiet time every day is really, really important. You know, it's such an important discipline. If you can't do it every day, to at least once a week or a couple times a week to actually sit down with your favorite beverage, whether that's a coffee or a tea, and a notebook so that you can write things, get them out of your head, or, you know, an Apple Pen and scribble it on an iPad so that you can really visualize what you're thinking. But actually take 30, 45, 60 minutes to reflect on your goals, on how your relationships are in your life, family, friends, colleagues at work, and, you know, look to, am I on track? Am I off track? And that's a practice that can help people gain clarity in life, is to take that reflection time. It's, remember, clarity has got a little element of stillness to it. So when you take that quiet reflection time, you're helping to turn down the volume of the noise that we hear every single day in the media, and just so much noise out there, information overload. So if I often ask people, how would the world be different if every single leader around the world took 30 to 60 minutes of quiet time once a week to ask themselves those questions? How am I doing on my goals? How am I doing on with my relationships? Am I being the kind of person that is serving others? And the world might be a very, very different place. But we can all start that today. It's a quote that we've often used here on Donald's LinkedIn Live is, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. So, if you aren't taking that reflection time, that's okay. You can start now going forward and get clarity in your life with those types of practices. Back to you, Don.
Yeah, I think you make excellent points, and they're heartfelt points, and they're genuine, and it shows there is clarity in your message and in your intention. So if you start with the right intention and the right message, you've got a much better chance of achieving whatever goal you have. And because we've always talked about the journey being more important than the destination and the people who are with you on the journey, that why not, be everything you can when you're getting validated by everybody around you, right? When everybody says you're okay and we love you, care about you, want to hear more about what you think, that's today's report card. That's not somebody who gave it to you 5 years ago in anger or 10 years ago in ignorance. And then you say, hey, this is my new report card, and when you feel proud of yourself, things start changing. When you feel confident in yourself, when you can't wait to be with new people and share the new you, right? So in a lot of cases, I think that what is easy to appreciate is when there's so much frenetic activity and energy outside of you. To get balance, you need to bring the quiet inside of you, right? And spend time in a safe place, which is inside you, right? You're the only person who has a key to that door. And what do you do when you go in? And the key is I look at it like, everybody's fighting a tough fight. When they get to their corner, they got to get refreshed, right? They got to get ready to get back in the ring. And I think that's so important, is to have a schedule of maintenance, right? You change your air filters in your house every so many months, and you spend money to do it and work, and nobody, I think, enjoys it. Why not look at what does it take to maintain a person like me, right? What do I require to be at top performance? So if you are affected by machines, maybe you should think of yourself as a machine, to get that proper attention to you, because no one's going to help anybody that doesn't want to help themselves, right? You can only do so much, but someone's got to make a move. And I think clarity is something that people then, once they're clear with themselves, what was that quote? If you can't be true to yourself, how can you be true to anybody else? Then you can get clear with other people, right? Once you got good vision, you start to see better, especially yourself. What do you think, Kelly?
I mean, I completely agree with all of that. And I love, what Charles was saying too, as far as, writing things down. One of the things that I do daily is I have a 5-minute journal. Started this years and years and years ago, because it's 5 minutes. Now, granted, there are other times that I do sit down and I write longer things depending on where I'm at, or, what's been going on. But you do it in the morning and in the evening, and it literally only takes 5 minutes. You put, 3 things that you're grateful for, 3 things that you want to make happen during that day. And then at the end of the day, it's what 3 things happen that you're grateful for, and final thoughts. So really all it is it's about framing your mindset for gratitude to start your day. And I've over the years, that's been something I've given to a lot of people, that even in leadership coaching that I've given to, and they'll be like, that was game changing. And it sounds so simple, and almost silly to some people. And I have had some people be like, how is that going to change anything? And I'm like, just give it a whirl before you, before you knock it. But for me, it's such a habit for me to do it now. Like anything else, I think, what is it? If you do it 21 days, it becomes a habit. Um, but just start small. I think people feel like, oh, I want those things and I want to do it. And then it's sort of like the the New Year's resolution of I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. And it's like, well, how many days are you going now? 0. Well, the odds of you actually accomplishing that are very slim. Take baby steps, just little things. Forward progression is forward progression. It doesn't matter how big the steps, but it's got to be achievable, attainable, and something, for me, the more, once you do, achieve something small, you're going for the next. And that gives you more and more, like, gosh, I want to get more into this. And it definitely just changes the way you see things. One of the things I thought of yesterday, speaking of the whole thing of fear, was all about mindset to me. Because this was a story I wanted to put in the chat yesterday, but I was like, it was too long. Is I worked for someone years ago, and we were at a presentation. After the presentation that he gave, and he was the president of the company, he took me outside and he said, well, you know that the VP of marketing for the US is out on maternity leave with their twins, and she decided she's not coming back. And I was like, oh God. And I've been temporarily running the position for a period of time, but temporarily running and taking it over are 2 totally different things. And he was like, I would like you to take the position. And of course I was feeling excited, terrified, all of those things all bundled in one, and honored that I had been chosen because I had only been there a short period of time. And I said, well, I don't know how to run the department. And he goes, neither do I. And he's like, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. And, fast forward into the fear part of this, something got a big mistake happened. And I, of course, was like, oh, dear God. But immediately was like, okay, what happened? How did this happen? How going forward, can this not happen again? And I went to his office and I said, hey, could I come in and chat? And I shut the door and he was like, uh-oh. And he pushed away from his computer, which I always appreciated that about him because he was with you when you were in there. And he's like, what's up? And so I explained to him, I'm like, wow, I really effed up, but here's what we need to do going forward. And here's what I think we can do to solve this. What are your thoughts? And he, of course, went through these like, sounds like a plan. And I was like, I am so sorry. And he's like, what are you sorry for? And I go, because I screwed up. And he's like, I know you're doing your job. Keep doing it. And he goes, this is how I know that you're pushing the envelope. And it changed. And he goes, but don't make it a habit. Like, don't do this again. Like, learn from it. But my perspective then was like, I felt so supported that I wasn't afraid to mess up. And that's such a different thing just in general in life to be. And I still don't like to mess up to this day. I don't think many people love to do it. But feeling safe and supported and encouraged, hey, you're not pushing the envelope enough. If you're not hitting a wall and messing something up, you got to try. So I think that does go back into the whole thing of where we are and always say is about mindset. So what are your thoughts, Charles?
Oh, I love your story, and it reminds me of a time years ago when I was actually working for Landmark Education at the time, and we had a customer complain about me. And I was mortified that the customer complained. And so anyway, the next morning, my boss called me into her office and she said, okay, so we got this complaint about you. And I know, I'm so sorry. She said, don't worry about it. I called the person up. I sorted the whole thing out. And I'm like, oh, I was so grateful and, relieved that she kind of managed it, but also a little bit embarrassed that she had done that for me. This is really right at the beginning of my career. And then I said, is that it? And she says, no, that's not it. I said, what else? And she said, I want 10 more complaints by Friday. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she said, you're not on the edge enough. You finally had a complaint. You're now on the edge. So I want 10 more by Friday.
That's awesome.
Well, what that shows, and hopefully what we're replicating here, is you feel more comfortable when people go out of their way not to respond the way you anticipate or even feel you deserve. Right? If you mess some up, you expect someone to be a little frustrated or disappointed. And when they come across the other way, because they're looking to build long term, not worry about short term.
Mhm.
They're looking to say, here's how I like things and how I respond to things. And then they give you more room. But if someone's on a tight leash, right, and is overmanaged, people are thinking about how not to get in trouble versus how to do better.
So I've
And
seen that environment too, which is it's awful. I mean, um, people who are under a fearful leader, which unfortunately I've seen them, and they think they're doing the right thing because I'm going to scare them to work harder, which I've never understood that mentality, and nor does it ever work. But it actually makes people mess up more because they're so terrified of messing up, and then it snowballs, right?
Mhm.
They make like a tiny little error, then they're like trying to fix it and they're scrambling, and that's when they're caught in all the noise. And it's just fascinating to, I'm so interested in human behavior and organization from the position of how does the whole thing operate together as the individuals and how they communicate and interact with one another. But that type of environment to me, and then leaders wanting to make a change, because I've had hard conversations with some CEOs being like, man, you're the problem. You're the reason that this is happening. You create such chaos when you walk in the door that people are, but he loved it. Like he loved that people would scurry and start freaking out. And I'm like, dude, that it's inefficient. Like you need to come from it from a different angle, and you'll be amazed at what people will do. Then the reason they're working 16-hour days is because they're not working efficiently because they're so in their headspace of creating more work, and they think they're busy doing stuff, but they're really not accomplishing anything. It's so interesting how, and another thing you guys talked about yesterday too, Charles, was that, like cultures within cultures, because I have certainly worked in organizations where the leader was, a lead by fear person. And I'm an empathetic manager. I look at my staff as individuals or my colleagues as individuals and manage them individually in the sense of everybody learns a little bit different. Everybody's motivated a little bit different. And, watching them become the best versions of themselves, like it's so great. And I'm like, why do you waste the time being in that nasty space trying to rip people apart all the time? But I mean, I of course know it's because it's about them and their own stuff. It has nothing to do with the individuals, but some young people in business don't understand that. And it's like, man, that's damaging behavior that goes into the next business. When they go to another job, they carry some of that, you know, um, bad relationship with them because it's an abusive type of relationship, and it definitely impacts them. What are your thoughts, Charles?
Well, there's no doubt about it that as leaders, we are always modeling a certain type of behavior to everybody around us. Exhibit A would be if you're a parent. The way you're acting as a parent is, you know, you're showing your kids how to act.
Yeah.
Uh, Let me just tell a really quick funny story here. I heard a funny story once about a little boy who was driving with his dad, and his dad would notice particularly attractive people on the street and would say, just completely inappropriate sort of thing. So the little boy picked up this behavior, and he's driving with his mom one day, and he sees an attractive person on the street, and he starts mimicking these noises, and the mother just turns around to him and says, "What are you doing? I'm acting like dad." So anyway, that was a difficult conversation that couple had when she got home. But as leaders, we're always modeling behavior, and this whole I find it appalling that leaders are leading with fear. I mean, the world is not going to tolerate this at all. And if there's one thing we're learning about the younger generation, is that they are much more growth mindset driven. They're actually more goal driven. There's been a lot of really interesting studies about how the younger generation is very much more goal minded, and they're more goal getters as opposed to goal setters. And it's really fascinating if you've studied goal setting over time and studied, that kind of space and personal development space over time. You can really see the vocabulary of goal setting and goal getting changing over the last several decades. And the younger generation, they get it, and they're setting goals more than the older generation typically has. And the other thing they get is that the world needs empathetic leaders, and they're just not going to tolerate leaders who create chaos, leaders that lead by fear, especially in this day and age when we're in this post-pandemic recovery period and we got all the other things going on around the world, the war in Europe and the bank contagion and economic devastation. People need empathy, and if you're a leader that leads by fear, you got to stop, because I'm telling you, people are going to be coming after you if you don't start treating people properly. It's just really crazy, and it drives me nuts.
Yes, I agree. And it's also the old saying of like, people don't leave organizations, they leave bad management or bad leadership. And I've known so many people and organizations, and I myself, I loved this organization I worked with, but the leader he was a nightmare, and had no, didn't want to change. And it's like, well, I can't change them, and I choose not to be here. And I know there's times that we don't always have that decision to make, because we need to stay in a job. But I do remember seeing young people who were like, they admired how people scurried when he walked in the room. And I was like, man, that makes me so upset that that's what he thinks leadership is supposed to look like. And what a rude awakening they're going to have, especially if they end up at a different organization, which they are now, and how to adjust to that. Because I think it's shameful. And I've said to many CEOs, I've been into some that have asked me, because of my leadership coaching with C-level about communication and such. And they'll be like, oh, there's a problem with our team. Can you, talk with them and see what's going on with the communication? And it's like, man, there's nothing wrong with your C-level staff. It's you. Like, you're the problem. But some have just a hard time seeing within themselves. And it's like, there's some hurt and pain going on in there that you're projecting on the rest of the world, and you need to resolve. Like, nobody can fix it. I can't fix that. You've got to want to fix it. But I just think it's fascinating that they'll think that it's everyone else. They're the victim. These people aren't doing their jobs right, or they're not doing this. And it's like, it's because of you. Sorry.
Yeah. And the chaos the chaos, just to round that off, the chaos that behavior creates is the polar opposite of clarity.
Yes.
Right? It's creating confusion.
Yeah.
And conflicting messages for people. It's really, we've got to stop it. Anyway, back to you, Don.
Okay, well, I think let me spend some time with the people in the audience and acknowledge them. But just to layer on to what you were saying, if what you're doing is modeling, then the question is, what do you model and to who? Second thing is, if you lead with fear, you're going to get the response of leadership by fear, right? If you lead by compassion, empathy, support, understanding, clarity, all these other words, you're going to receive more of that, because you're going to test people to see if they're capable, or are they fear driven, and are they in the right group? So the key is, everything I heard about parenting was, the main thing was consistency, right? If you're going to discipline for the same reasons, because then everybody understands. And if you're not, then that's another thing. So with that said, and I was always in a position where I was doing the hiring, I was doing the leading, right? I never had a job until, one job when I was 15, and it taught me never to work for somebody again. But I think the answer, before we go into recognition here, is everything is getting decentralized. People don't have to depend on the person above them or the CEO to give them, positive passage to success. You take it in your own hands, unfiltered, with clarity, to the public, with a group, right? Look at the strength you have versus trying to get through someone's door, to get someone's calendar, to meet with them on their terms in their situation. But with that, Paul's here. Let's just run through these. I had that phrase down. Andrea, who's going to be here Tuesday, and it's always great to see you, Andrea. And you know what's happening here? People are not bringing career or professional experiences as much as life experiences.
Mhm.
And on the plane of life experiences, no one is better or less because everybody wakes up, does what they do, and goes to sleep, right? It's really where you're at with your head, and who are you're with, because you can't help but be better for being around people who love you, and you can't help but be worse for people who don't. It's just the way it is, Mosen's here. Welcome to live. Paul, who you are on your worst day is who you truly are.
Yes.
So true. People are programmed to seek certainty, unfortunately, and the more they search for it, the less they get. Just like this show, trust yourself to trust yourself. When the words are necessary, you'll have them. If you're not thinking about them, worrying about them. Dean says coffee tastes better when you're spending it with people you know. Everything tastes better.
Yes.
Everything feels better. Oh, love that, Charles. Inhale and exhale.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Paul, this week was an insane week for my highlighter. We were reflecting on my birthday, how much has changed over the past decade. Impossible equals I'm possible. So true. And what you believe is what is. There's nowhere around it, Charles, really important that people take reflection time at least once per week. Ask, how am I doing with my goals? How are my relationships? Am I serving others? Write all these things down and reflect. And all these comments are on the post. So if you don't remember them or write them down, you can get them later. You can also watch the show anytime because it's pretty much cataloged every day in everybody's profile. Charles, when we have clarity, we can see things more clearly and make better decisions. And, sometimes you just got to take your glasses off and give them a wipe.
Yes.
Writing crystallizes thought, and thought produces action. Paul J. Meyer. I actually got to meet Paul J. Meyer, and he was involved in an organization. He gave a great speech one night. That is something I really need to get back to, that gratitude journaling, and 5 minutes a day makes it really something there is no excuse to not do. Thank you for the reminder. And that's food for thought, just like Kelle came up with 4 or 5 thoughts from yesterday. And maybe someone came up with 3 different thoughts because of what Brian said. But if you got people not only doing things differently, but starting to think, and just like Mac and so many people, we bring back memories that shouldn't have been hidden away for so long. Great celebrations. I hear nothing but about grandparents and uncles and celebrations in the family that people are starting to remember. And those were wins. Those were positive parts of your life. Andrea says it is a lifestyle to love yourself and give and serve. That's where the action is. And that's where the most scarcity is, right? Clarity is essential for effective communication. When we are clear in our communication, we can ensure that our message is understood by others. Paul, Mac, gratitude is definitely a game changer. It's been a daily practice I've done over the past year and a half. Gratitude, an attitude of gratitude, because what you do is you lower the bar to a point where you say, I'm so happy with this blueberry, or I just love this sweater. Just find something.
Yeah.
Right, to focus on that gives you some joy. Like Dan said earlier, having his coffee with people. The coffee doesn't change, but you change on how you respond to things that you take for granted. Timothy, haven't seen you, but welcome. Always looking for new people. Thanks, folk. Useful reminders taking the rest of the day. That's why it's great having a pick-me-up show like this. Is you can get right when you're not right, and you got your whole day to benefit from it.
Yes.
right? This day to ponder it and get ready for it, because everybody just wants to know, give me the direction, give me the answer, I'll do it. Everybody's capable, but most people, to Charles and what Kelly's saying, don't have the clarity. There are conflicting messages, conflicting relationships, torn between this and that, this person and that person. What's your thoughts, Kelly?
Well, I was just thinking as you were saying all of that, one of the things that we tend to not do for ourselves also is, and I worked with a coach myself, and I still do. Everybody's always like, why does a coach need a coach? And I'm like, a doctor needs a doctor. I mean, I still have mentors and coaches that I completely trust. But one of the things was I was so focused on goals instead of clarity, and then achieving. And I wasn't paying attention to how I got there. She was like, I want you to sit down and do this exercise and look back what you have accomplished in the last 6 months. And I started writing down, and I'm not kidding. It was one of those moments for me that I was like, holy crap, I can't believe I did all of that. And she was like, embrace it, enjoy it, celebrate it. You're so focused on getting somewhere that you're not being focused on the process to get there. And that was a aha moment in my life for me, because I was like, man, you're so right. And this also goes to, and I've had people ask me, why do you put a flower after your name? And I do that for a couple reasons. One, it's easy to see my name somewhere, for one, and it's recognizable, so when people see it. But two, it's because during that whole exercise with that coach that I was working with at the time, it was, you need to look back and realize that all along you're blooming, and I'm still blooming. I'm not finished. We're still going. So it's a reminder to me personally to be like, be in the moment, be present, enjoy, you're blooming, love it, and embrace it, and be present with it, because we miss so much of ourselves. We're too busy. Everyone's all about pointing out what I could have done, should have done, would have done. What about what you did do? I mean, that's pretty spectacular, and take time to celebrate yourself. I don't think we do enough of that. I certainly wasn't at the time for those reasons. I was so focused on this goal that I wasn't clear. I was stuck in all of the noise and all of the things to get to this place. And the place holds nothing of value when you get there, when you've not enjoyed the ride to get there. Because I arrived, and then I was like, this sort of sucks. And it's because I was so busy, I missed so many amazing things and wasn't celebrating myself. But it was something I needed to go through in order to be where I am. I know now to value and appreciate the path, the journey, and enjoy the ride, all of it, even the bad stuff. I don't like the bad stuff either, but I always know it's short-lived. How many of our bad days have we survived thus far? All of them. It's a pretty darn good track record. So I remind myself when I'm in the funk or something bad is going on, it's going to be over. God bless you.
Well, I think what you just said is we're all survivors of everything that got us to this moment.
Yes.
Right? So somehow we worked through it or failed at it or whatever, but we moved to where we are, and we all have choices where we are, right? And it's getting clarity of priority. What's important? What needs to go first? What's the lowest hanging fruit I could find to nourish me? And what's really incredible, when you come to the realization that this is going to be how your rest of your life is going to work out, that there's going to be more interesting people, more exciting people. I'm a big person for trends and progressions. When I see people like Charles or Kelly or Brian, and this week you'll meet Brett, and you meet all the people on the right side, they're only going to keep coming. They're not going to stop. And the people you're meeting now, you're going to get to know better in time. So you've just gotten the first sip, of a wonderful cocktail here, and then add yourself to a beach with a bunch of friends having a good time. And what better life could you expect, Charles? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think that these are really, really important reminders about stopping and enjoying the journey along the way. And I think that the flower after your name, Kelly, is a good reminder of stopping and smelling the roses. You know,
Hmm.
that's a very popular saying. And then as far as the highs and lows go, this might sound a bit trite and ridiculous, but you know, there's always going to be highs and lows. And I know that when I'm at work and I'm on a big high, I kind of like test my resilience and think, okay, not every day is going to be a high. So, you know, if you're on a high right now, get ready for a low. And not every day is going to be a low. So if you're on a low right now, get ready for the high. Life's always a roller coaster. It's like you have a goal that takes you from point A to point B, but it's not a straight line. It's going to be a squiggly line. And any doctor will tell you that a flat line is bad anyway, right?
Right. That's
There's
right.
always going to be ups and downs. You want a really healthy sinus rhythm there so that you've got your heart going up and down. So there's a nature telling us that there are going to be highs and lows. And it comes back to, you know, clarity helps us to reduce stress when we are in the lows and helps us to appreciate the highs when we have the highs, and just emphasizes again the importance of having clarity.
Well, I think, sometimes if you look at it, and you can look at it any way you want, that's the beauty of it, is some things fall into your lap that aren't very pleasant, and you can actually say it's my turn, right? You look around, you see the newspaper, people going through whatever they're going through, right? And it doesn't seem to impact you because you are somewhat distanced or detached from it. But when it comes into your house, right, then it becomes a major issue. And I think people have to realize what everybody experiences in one way, shape, or another, you're going to experience at different times for different circumstances. So when it comes around to you, you got to just accept that this is the way it works. Here's my serving, right? Now, how am I going to deal with it? And how am I one day going to overcome it? But, I think with clarity, there deserves patience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So I want to
absolutely.
get a clear picture, but I don't have to jump through windows and do crazy things. I can be methodical. If
Mhm.
you're happy planning your life methodically, why not plan your challenges methodically and put them in their proper place, write them down, look at them, and make friends with them, or not friends, but at least living together, right? Someone comes into your house you don't want, and they're only going to be here for whatever period of time. Why not cohabitate the best you can versus putting all your time, energy, and stress fighting something?
Right. I mean, that's such a waste. I mean, it goes to the whole thing of, the experience is what you make of it. If a house guest is coming over that I don't really enjoy this human being, if I go into it being like, wow, this is going to be terrible, it's going to be terrible. If I go into it going, you know what? It's only going to be for a couple hours. I'm going to enjoy it and have the best time that I can with it. And I will, because it is all about mindset. And I know we've said this before, because when you go in thinking something is going to be terrible, you will find every little thing that comes to confirm that belief, regardless of the situation. Whereas if you went in feeling like this is going to be, I'm going to make the best of it, it's going to be great, you'll find everything in that moment to confirm that belief as well. So it is totally about your mindset. And you're right. It is about, and this is another one of Christy's things, dancing with my skeletons. There's so many T-shirts we need to make. I feel like it is, and when going through something bad, or a downtime, whatever, a low, however we want to categorize it, is knowing that it's not going to last forever, because it won't. And I remember going through some, I've had some pretty bad stuff happen in my life, and so has everybody else. And I remember telling my mom, like, I can't do this. Like, I can't, this is too much. And my mom's thing has always been, God never gives you more than you can handle. And I was like, well, I wish he didn't think so highly of me sometimes. But again, it goes back to the whole thing of, we've survived 100% of our bad days, or our lows, or however you want to categorize it. And we're still here. That's a pretty darn good track record. And they're not as bad when you're surrounded with community. And I do think that's part of what's here. I know I'm amazingly blessed with the family and friends that I have to support me when I'm going through things. I mean, I'm so self-aware, and I'm like, I get on the phone right away, like, man, I'm going through something and I need to talk this through. But I know here, and a lot of people don't have that. And so I think this supplies that in some way. And I feel, one person hears something and they're like, oh, I feel better because somebody else went through something or is having a bad time, or I can relate to that. Or like I said earlier, that one takeaway, one person is like, I forgot about the 5-minute journal, starting my day and ending it with gratitude. I'm going to start that. You know what? Day done. I mean, somebody took something positive away and feels supported to do something to make them feel better about their life. I mean, I feel fulfilled already, and it's not even 9 a.m. yet.
Well, I think people are sitting on an explosive opportunity because everybody who's taking your message and Charles's message also relays a message on the network we're on, right? So if people say, I just heard a great quote by Charles, and sends it to their 10,000 followers, and just one or two send it to somewhere else, eventually you can't keep beauty down. It just has a way of rising above everything. And we've already sent things down the river that have yet to come in, to port wherever they're going, that will continue to spread. I mean, and that's so cool to be at the front end of something, knowing you don't have to be all the way, every part of the way for it to go, right? It's like, it's just a relay race in a way. And, people who, like yourself, Kelly, or Charles, when you do feel you've evolved, when you feel you've really achieved a better you, then a new challenge is, how is this new you gonna respond, right? It's like if you got a brand new truck that does all kinds of cool stuff, sometimes you can't wait to put it through its paces, and a challenge becomes an opportunity to be better than you have in your past challenges, and I believe the saying, people are like elevator buttons, some take you up and some take you down, right? And if you can be with the people who are up, and even the most empathetic person, after a while, if someone's just having a pity party and just can't stop complaining, at a certain point, it's like, not only couldn't I help your day, now you just ruined my day. And it's man, it's drama, it's all this. It's like, it is what it is. That's what it is, and then whatever you want to add to it, for as long as you want to keep it together and take the past into the future, that's an opportunity. Let me just, Charles has been, doing double duty with his wonderful quotes. Here we go, Christy. Yet I don't wear t-shirts, but yes, Kelly, instead of having my sayings in people's heads, have them wear. That's where wonderful, beautiful ideas come. Someone says something, someone says, let's do it. Not let's think about it, let's plan it, let's get together every so often and talk about it. God has a sense of humor, especially when it comes to asking for patience. Well, where's the fire? Whatever you're doing now, you're going to be doing something after this. You ever see people can't wait to get somewhere, when they get somewhere, can't wait to leave and go somewhere else? There's a saying, if you don't know where you are, maybe you're already there, right? So, why chase? Why not be attractive? You know what I mean? Why not bring people to you instead of running after people? And I think we found a wonderful platform in order to make connections, right? That are true based on what we see, because what we see is about the only thing left, especially if it's live, that you can trust. Everything that's written, right? And we've known, even with this chat thing, could be by a bot. Anybody that's using all kinds of AI. And I think people wanted this. Now they need it more than ever before, because the challenges are different than ever before. So this is almost like, an antidote to all the noise, all the chaos, all the confusion, and to the biggest point, total lack of clarity.
Yes.
Right? Which adds to confusion. Charles, what's your thoughts?
Absolutely. Lack of clarity adds to confusion, and lots of clarity helps us to push through doubt. So that's just a really important thing to remember as well. That when we're unfocused and distracted, we start just doubting ourselves,
Mhm.
and mental clarity helps us to see ourselves honestly and non judgmentally. And instead of worrying about things and overthinking things, if we have a clear mind, then we're less likely to entertain thoughts of doubt. And if we, and the other thing is, to your point before about, kind of planning for the difficult times, Don, I think that kind of was how you summed it up. I do I do coach people, and not a lot, but I do have a small regular a train of people that I coach. And one of the things that I sometimes do with people, if they're going through a lot of doubt and confusion, or if they're going through a downtime, is I have them do what I call a written download. And I say to them, just write down everything that's bothering you, everything. You can do it as a mind map, you can do it as a list, you can do it randomly on a blank piece of paper, however you want. But the critical thing is you write it down and you get it out of your head, and you just literally download everything in your mind that's bothering you, that's troubling you. If you've got a problem at work, you've got a problem in a relationship, you just write down all the aspects of it, and that's how you get it out of your head. And that will start to unclutter your mind. It'll start to give you that clarity in your mind of the problem. You'll be able to visualize the problem on the page. You might think, well, I would organize this a little bit differently there, and this a little bit differently there, and it just really helps to give people clarity and push through doubt and downtimes that they might be experiencing. And I think that um, to your comments about the connections here on LinkedIn, Don, I think that this platform allows people to build positive, authentic relationships with people and that are unique and highly valued.
Well, and plus, I think the reason that is because get to know people up front deep
Mhm.
before you even choose to get to know them superficially. And the other way, everybody gets to know everybody superficially, and everybody's trying to look better, talk better, act better, right? Which is getting away from clarity. So when you start with clarity, it's easier to build on that because everybody has an ability to see it and feel it over time also, right? If this was once a month, people would forget about us a lot earlier than 30 days. If it's every day, it does feed a positive addiction, where people just want it again. There's some benefit or pleasure or enjoyment to it that takes people out of themselves. When you're one of 50, you're only 2% of you, right? When you're 100% sitting in a corner by yourself, that's way too much time, too much you, and too much of the same. It'd be different if your mind kept changing every minute, but most of the time it goes back to it, and then you live this spiral where when you're having fun and you're with people, you don't even remember what you were worried about. And here's a lesson for everybody: ask yourself what you were worried about a year ago today. And the answer is going to be what you're going to think about, what you're worried about a year from now today, right? Because it's only momentary, and all things will pass. And sometimes I just say play through. And the closer I get to an event that for whatever reason, turns me off, or I'm challenged by it, I also know I'm a day closer to getting beyond it.
Yes.
Right? Because if there's a date, let's say it's October 1st, I know October 2nd it's going to be finished. And if you've been through a lot and you survived a lot, you say to yourself, I can deal with this, however it works out, right? No one can take my past. No one can take the people I know. No one can take the things I know away from me, right? And so what's left? Stuff,
Mhm.
right? And that's the worst that can happen. And people, everybody wants to go to heaven. Nobody wants to die, right? And it's the same thing in life. Everybody wants to benefit. Like I always say, yelling at a stove, give me fire and I'll give you wood. It works just the opposite. I love these conversations because it really opens up people's minds, imaginations, creativity. It's like, hey, I can add anything I want to anything. You know, I could be anything for a moment. And, you know, you can always be everything in your mind forever if you want to, right? And sometimes feeling it by thinking it is almost as good as doing it. And that's what laughter yoga was about, you know, that took place, is people found laughter was so therapeutic, but most people didn't have jokes or people to make them laugh. So they created a collaborative group who would get together and make themselves laugh, like, you know, and it worked. Charles?
Yeah, I think that we can never underestimate the power of laughter. And I know that sometimes during difficult times or stressful times, my wife has encouraged me to pull up some of our favorite sitcoms, you know, like Will and Grace or Frasier, or something like that, and watch them, you know, Modern Family, and watch them so that we just get this little dose of laughter and lightheartedness coming through our lives, and it keeps, it brings back the clarity. I love watching movies, and I find that going into an immersive experience like a really stimulating movie, even if it's what would not be a highly ranked action film, I find that, you know, really surrendering my brain in a movie theater to an immersive movie can really help me to change my perspective, and it forces me to, you know, pull my attention off of a problem and put my attention on something else altogether. And then an hour and a half or 2 hours later, when I walk back out into the outdoors, you know, I have a little bit more perspective on life at that particular time. So the other interesting thing uh, about gaining clarity, there's a lot of research around what causes insights and how do you have insights. And the insights generally don't come about when you're focusing on a problem. Insights usually come about when you're not focusing on the problem, when you're thinking about something else. So if you're going to ask people, even here, the people that are listening, where do you have your insights? People are probably going to say, well, I have my insights when I'm driving, maybe, or I have insights in the shower, or I might have insights when I'm exercising. They don't necessarily have insights when they're in front of a team with a whiteboard or a flip chart and they're trying to manage their way through a sales problem or a manufacturing problem or an operations problem or a finance problem or a banking problem, for example. You know, it usually, you know, I find the most powerful insights often come when you're at the end of the dock on a still lake, having a tasty coffee or a glass of wine or something like that with friends or family, and that's when a lot of inspiration and insights and clarity come about. So back to you, Don and Kelly.
Kelle, what's your thought? This is a wonderful conversation because it really not only it gets us more comfortable with being comfortable, talking about clarity and what you do to enjoy a moment where you'll achieve clarity.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with what Charles just said. Because same, I feel like when you're in that high stress, emotional, whatever state, that's when it's noise. So there's no clarity in that. It's always sitting at the end of the dock, you know, with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. I love that. I even look at when I have those mornings where I wake up at 3 a.m. or something insane like that. It used to really frustrate me, and I'd be like, dang it, I can't go back to sleep. And then because I was focused on making it a problem, because now I'm awake and now I'm going to be tired. And I was focused on that part of it, or my brain would start going. And again, mind shift and just being like, okay, well, I'm supposed to be awake right now for a reason. Maybe I'm supposed to be having some conversation with God or pray, and I think still mindset. And that's when I keep not only do I have my journal next to my bed, but I do have like a book that's just a paper. So if I want to journal something longer or at 3 a.m. when I'm having some clarity and insight, I write it down. Because the biggest lie I tell myself every single day is I'll remember that. And I never do. And it's like, man, that was a brilliant idea. I know I had something great. Or just some clarity where I can exhale and be like, oh, I was still carrying this one little issue that I really didn't realize until right now, and I need to let it go. And I think we say that a lot too. Like when you were saying earlier, Charles, about writing down some of those things that you're carrying around. There's something psychologically about doing that that lets you let it go. And I know I'm at a place in life where when I'm like, man, why was I holding that so long? Like, because I'm choosing to carry it. When you figure that out of what that really looks like for you, it is kind of that aha moment of like, man, I wish I would have let that go like a decade ago, or I didn't realize that I was still carrying it. And it still happens to me. I just had this recently. I was like, I noticed it's like, oh my gosh, I am carrying this stuff that I don't need to be carrying. It's not my it's not my thing to bear. I need to let it go and get back to my clarity, because it does just it fogs everything up. And great example. And now I feel super inspired to want to go find a. I either want to go to the beach, which I will be soon, or to go to the end of the dock and have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and just let whatever comes to me and be present in the moment. That is when you're, to me, clarity and being present. That's when such great insight comes for me. What do you think, Don?
Well, I think that everything is more or less depending on who measures and how you measure. And you're never going to be better or worse than you are right now. You're only going to be who you are right now, right? And I think the other element that's so important for people is taking responsibility and being accountable.
Yes.
Because once you can do that, you can get over the blame part or the co-blame part or why it should have never happened part. And from there, I think what changes beyond just moving forward is you don't get into situations that you did 10 years ago going forward. So you don't keep, what you do is you start constructing valuable relationships, something that will continue to pay everybody dividends, right? That now the investments are sound. The relationships are based on clarity, integrity, honesty, something you want, and if you want it, you got to give it in order for people just to recognize that's what you want and hope they can return it. Just a couple quick comments. Don, I love to know your thoughts. If you reach out to connect and people accept but don't respond to having a conversation and change after they hear you speak, would you? No, I that's a good point. One thing that maybe goes to connecting and collaborating is I won't connect with anybody I wouldn't be happy to have a call with right after, right? If I'm going to put the ceiling on a relationship before I even know the person or get to know the person, why would I want to connect? Because connecting says I'm accessible, right? I'm available. I'm supportive. If all you're doing is building a number and throwing the person out with the bathwater, that's not clarity. That's just the opposite. Charles says the past is just a memory, the future is just a fantasy, and the present all that truly exists. It is what it is again, and that's just the way it is. And be happy. Why not? Be happy when you're going through challenges, right? You don't have to turn everything off. You can balance and you can minimize. Too many people exaggerate. Well, if this happens, this is going to happen, and pretty soon all that's going to happen, and boom, right? Versus, hey, I trust myself to deal with it as it comes forward, right? Not to get overexcited. Kelly, you will have over 2 weeks for getting some great Clary Beach dock and warm weather. Of course, Merlot and Pinot, wine and dogs.
Yes, I'm going to be house sitting and dog sitting and at Christmas.
Well, and that's the beauty of it is people end up in situations they can never plan, right? House sitting, getting to know Charles in Hong Kong, getting to meet people who are going to be here on an ongoing basis, like Andrea and Gretchen's tomorrow. And I mean, it's so beautiful because we're just the spark. If we were the flame, we wouldn't have a lot of sustainability, and if what happens here illuminates, because all it takes is a little change to make a major difference. You know, saying yes instead of no, or no instead of yes, or walking out a door that you never want to walk back into, you know. And usually people do that when they feel they've got support, they've got strength, they've got resources. Internally, especially in this world, you can't start from zero and rise up that fast. You know, they say the first million's the hardest thing next, you know, compared to the second million, right? So the same thing here is, I'm so excited and gratified so many people are joining, are participating, and are benefiting. Charles?
Yeah, I think it's really, really fantastic, Don. And the discussion is really quite stimulating. And I think my really encouragement for people will be to focus on your future vision and give yourself some reflection time to really have that stillness inside you, so that when you're thinking of that future vision, it's really a future vision that comes with clarity, as opposed to something that's cluttered and busy and noisy. And just remember that time marches on. And as you know, there are lots of quotes around time being an illusion, but it's certainly how we measure ourselves. And time marches on. And if you have something inspiring, even just something you want to do, go do it. Start it today. Don't wait. Make it happen. Whatever is in your heart, whatever dreams you want to pursue, go for it and don't stop.
So great. Kelle, final words?
I mean, I love that so much. And then, I've lived my life in that way. I don't always remember, but I remind myself regularly about being in the moment and not putting it off. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. Live every day like it's your last. And I had someone years ago that I worked with that always said, live every day like it's your birthday. And I love that. But yeah, don't put it off till tomorrow. Do it today. Start doing, because you're right. Time is not guaranteed. And then I think, like I ended last show, and I just feel like this should now be my sign off, is I just feel like everyone needs to go out and shine so bright that the rest of the world can't help but shine too.
Well, that's wonderful. And I think that, you know, what I'd love to see is people come back tomorrow after hearing what they heard today and share what they did with it, or what they're now planning to do with it. Because if we're going to be here every day, why not help every day in that direction? And, you know, if you reach out and share this, and if you really have a compelling story that has value, I'm happy to have you on the show.
Yeah. Or
Right?
even if they can't be here tomorrow to share it in the comments afterwards. Let us know this strength.
Absolutely. And I think what it says, sharing is caring, you know, and it's one way. And I can't thank Charles enough. He had 100 comments that he put on yesterday, that everybody who said anything, Charles responded to it.
And thoughtfully.
Yeah. And personally, you know, I'm still guilty sometimes of templating a little bit. But it's so nice when people go the whole distance. You know, most people don't even get started. You know, people say, boy, it'd be nice if people go the extra mile. People don't even go the first mile sometimes. But that's okay, because that's pre-qualification. You know, to Paul's point, if someone won't move up a level with you, they've already identified the level they're going to be at. Right? And if that works for you, great. But here's the other thing. Love the moment. Right? Try to get as much in the moment and not in the past, as Charles says, or not into the future. You steal your time from yourself that you have right now, you know, and then trust yourself. The next moment will be a surprise. How many times did you ever have something you didn't want to open up because you want to keep thinking of what's in there, you know? And this is like a present you give yourself that you can unwrap. And, you know, make yourself smile, make yourself laugh, watch a comedy, do something you haven't done in a long time that used to get you excited. I'll tell you one last thing before we sign off. I was expecting a big thing to happen, a big acquisition, a lot of money involved. And it turned out just totally wrong, right? The whole call, everything. And I was so devastated. And I usually don't get that way. And I didn't even think. I got in my car, I drove to my mother's, and she had some cakes and cookies and brought some stuff out. And after an hour of being with her, everything disappeared. But just like I was a little boy again, that when life just isn't supportive, you can go see your mom, and she doesn't care about the numbers or the deal. You know, it's like, how you doing? Good to see you. And that's where people need to go, is where they've been and they know it's safe, or with people they love to be with. And no matter what, you can't beat things like that. So anyways, we'll end two things. Dean says, stay curious. It shows Dean was here from beginning then, because he was also the first comment today. Live in the moment, love the moment, and the future will take care of itself. I'm a firm believer. With that, thank you, Charles. Thank you, Kelly. I sure got a lot out of it. It was so heartfelt. So with that, rest up, come back in 23 hours. Gretchen will be here, and we'll take it from where we left it. Thank you again. Thank you all.